Part 44. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuchi. Chapter 431. Boom. After hearing the sudden violent crash behind him, Shen Loxi immediately slowed down and glanced through the rearview mirror, and then sighed with a trace of worry in his eyes. The driver of the van got into a big accident. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom worth nearly $5 million. Just a scratch that needed to be spray painted would cost at least $30,000 to $50,000. And for the collision just now, without a compensation of $100,000 or $200,000, I'm afraid the owner of the Rolls-Royce Phantom will not give up. Regarding Shen Loxi's unfounded worries, Zhang Fengjai just chuckled and said nothing more. Because the people in the silver van had enough financial resources to pay compensation and enough confidence to make the owner obey. However, he still deliberately glanced at the hit Rolls-Royce sign through the rearview mirror, and then began to look for luxury cars with similar signs on the road. Finally, when he passed the intersection of two traffic lights, he saw another Rolls-Royce luxury car that asked Shen Luo and Zidu to keep a certain distance. Then, he looked behind him through his rear sight and found that the second silver van was also following. Silently counting the time, secretly waiting for the opportunity. Finally, just as the Rolls-Royce stopped slowly on the side of the road and Shen Loxi's sports car quickly passed the luxury car, Zhang Fengjai immediately used his mind to control the invisible sword energy that had been prepared and continued to pierce the silver van. Of tires. Boom. It's completely over. When he heard the second violent crash behind him, Shen Loxi immediately glanced through the rearview mirror and couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Compared with the damage caused by the collision during driving, the second collision caused significantly less damage to the luxury car. This also made Zhang Fengjai, who heard Shen Loxi sigh, couldn't help but retort. It's not just tens of thousands of yuan in compensation, but the van driver can still come up with it if he grits his teeth. Tens of thousands. After hearing the amount of compensation mentioned in Zhang Fengjai's retort, Shen Loxi couldn't help but repeat it, then shook his head and explained with a wry smile. Yizi, the name of the Rolls-Royce that was hit now is Phantom. It's completely different from the Rolls-Royce Phantom that was hit just now. Because the ex-factory price of a Rolls-Royce Phantom is nearly 9 million, and the repair cost for the smashed headlight alone is more than 100,000. If you include the price of lights and spray paint, as well as the cost of transportation to the provincial capital, the van driver will have to pay at least more than 500,000 yuan in compensation. It's so expensive. Although the compensation of more than 500,000 yuan was nothing to him now, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but feel a little surprised when he needed to compensate so much for just a broken car light and a slight scratch. Yezi, now you know why Zhu Zhenjun's Bugatti Veyron sports car, worth nearly 30 million, can speed up and down the road at will. After retracting his gaze from the rearview mirror, and thinking that the gift he had ordered for Zhang Fengjai would be shipped to Ningji City in half a month at most, Shen Loxi further reminded him of the importance of the luxury car so that he could highlight the gift of preciousness. Because a luxury car worth more than 10 million not only represents your identity and status, but it can also make surrounding vehicles and pedestrians afraid to approach it. After all, compensation for any injury may be a sky-high price that ordinary people will not be able to earn in their lifetime. Well, whether it is a feudal society ruled by emperors or a modern society with rapid economic development, the gap between the rich and the poor and the gap between status will always be an unavoidable social phenomenon. Unless the world can enter the world of great harmony described by the saints, or the human mind can reach the state of having no desires and desires, otherwise, even if the gods come to the world, they will not be able to change this unfair fact. Therefore, facing Shen Loxi's slightly superior evaluation, Zhang Fengjai could only sigh and didn't know what to say. Wrong. She couldn't help but use the rearview mirror to take another look at the scene of the car accident. Shen Loxi suddenly realized that something was not right. She quickly turned the steering wheel and parked the sports car on the side of the road, then turned around and asked solemnly. Yezi, were the two silver vans just now sent by the Liu family to follow me? Did you secretly use Taoism to sneak attack, causing them to crash into the expensive Rolls-Royce? Loxi, you are overthinking. How could the Liu family, which is already in chaos, still have time to trouble you? Maybe it's just a coincidence. Shen Loxi didn't want to worry too much and affect tonight. Candlelight dinner and business, so Zhang Fengjai said with a smile. Yeah. Shen Loxi, who was obviously a little unconvinced, asked in reply, then opened the car window and stuck his head out, wanting to continue to observe the events that followed the car accident. Thinking that there were more than a dozen gangsters with weapons stuffed in the van, Zhang Fengjai, who was afraid that Shen Loxi would notice anything unusual, directly pulled her head back into the car, and then reminded her while holding her stomach. Luo 11, my stomach is almost starving. Let's go and enjoy the delicious turtle feast. Thinking that for today's interview, Zhang Fengjai must have spent a lot of time using physiognomy. In the end, Shen Loxi, whose heartache overcame her curiosity, nodded and agreed. Oh well. Then she turned the car back on and returned to the road. Zhang Fengjai secretly breathed a sigh of relief and leaned directly on the soft back of the seat. However, when he accidentally saw a black SVU business car through the rearview mirror, a look of doubt flashed in his eyes. After passing a red light intersection, the black SUV business car was still following the sports car, which made Zhang Fengjai immediately alert. Then, he pretended to rest and closed his eyes, and after driving his mind to leave the sea of consciousness, he quickly infiltrated the business car. When he saw four men in black suits holding submachine guns sitting in the business car, Zhang Fengjai's mind quickly returned to the sea of consciousness, suddenly opened his eyes and turned his head to look at the black business car, and quickly calculated in his mind. The strong murderous aura that he just felt in his consciousness showed that the four men in black in the business car were the kind of desperate criminals who killed people without blinking an eye. If the same method was used to cause a car accident, the four men in black would definitely act in advance to complete the task. With the range and penetration of the submachine gun, it would not only threaten Shen Loxi's safety, but also cause casualties to innocent pedestrians around. Then, the retribution of karma might be enough to make him suffer, so Zhang Fengjai hurriedly ordered without caring about Shen Loxi's feelings. Loxi, speed up and overtake, and get rid of the black SUV business car behind. Yezi, what happened? Shen Loxi asked nervously while stepping on the accelerator to speed up. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 432. Killers sent by Chen Yunhan, chairman of the Kowloon Group. Just when he used his mind to check the situation in the business car, the driver was on the phone. From the driver's address to the caller and the voice on the phone, Zhang Fengjai knew that the four gun-wielding killers in the business car were sent by Chen Yunhan, chairman of the Kowloon Group, and their target was Shen Loxi, who led the Yongsheng Group to gradually surpass the Kowloon Group. Damn it! Thinking of Chen Yunhan threatening to hand over all the original shares of the Yongsheng Group at his father's funeral, Shen Loxi cursed angrily and continued to increase the speed to distance herself from the black business car. Zhang Fengjai silently calculated the range and power of the submachine gun. When Shen Loxi took advantage of a traffic light to increase the distance from the black business car to more than 50 meters, Zhang Fengjai immediately used his mind to control the invisible sword energy that had been prepared long ago, and directly stabbed the tire of the black business car. Boom! Due to the sudden acceleration of the red Ferrari, the black business car was forced to speed up desperately to catch up, which caused the driver to suddenly lose control and had no time to react. The black business car crashed heavily into a small electric car in front. The sudden impact force and the strong inertia formed by the fast driving caused the black business car to roll over directly to the side of the road, and then return to its original position under the blockage of the fence. However, at the moment when the business car returned to its original position, two cold black submachine guns fell from the broken car window, which immediately caused the surrounding passers-by to panic and flee. Fortunately, at this time, 3 police cars that had just completed their mission passed by. Afterwards, 7 policemen with pistols got out of the police car and successfully arrested the 4 killers and the driver in the business car. Yezi, stop fooling me. Were the 2 silver vans at the beginning sent by the Liu family to hunt me down? She didn't quite believe Zhang Fenjai's words to fool her, and now she saw how he dealt with the black business car, so Shen Loxi's attention immediately returned to the 2 silver business cars that had just crashed into the Rolls-Royce. That's right. Since Shen Loxi already knew the killer sent by Chen Yunhan, it didn't matter if she continued to know the origin of the silver van, so Zhang Fenjai nodded without hiding it. At the moment when Zhang Fenjai nodded in acknowledgement, Shen Loxi's eyes flashed with a complicated look, and she turned her head to look at Zhang Fenjai without saying a word. Loxi, look at the road. It was the peak time for getting off work, and a second or 2 of distraction could lead to a car accident. Shen Loxi's behavior of not looking at the road at all was simply seeking death, so Zhang Fenjai quickly reminded her. Yezi, I will wash myself and wait for you in bed tonight. When she withdrew her gaze, Shen Loxi gave Zhang Fenjai a temptation that immediately made his blood boil, which made him fail to notice a black Land Rover luxury car that was also following them 20 meters behind. After passing the intersection with 2 traffic lights, Shen Loxi turned the car around and drove into an alley, and then stopped at Xiaozu Turtle Restaurant, which was not too luxuriously decorated, but had many luxury cars parked in front of the door. Yezi, the owner of this turtle restaurant is called Xiaoyu, a beautiful woman with extraordinary charm, and a top chef with exquisite craftsmanship. While opening the car door and getting out of the car, Shen Loxi began to praise the craftsmanship of the owner of the turtle restaurant in front of him. Whether it is the signature dish, the braised turtle, or the dozen or so dishes that come with it, they are all truly unparalleled delicacies that will leave you with an endless aftertaste. After hearing Shen Loxi's praise, Zhang Fenjai subconsciously sniffed the aroma wafting from the turtle restaurant. A mouth-watering olfactory shock made him frown. Because this aroma suddenly reminded him of a very rare poisonous beast, a white widow that can cause even monks to hallucinate, that is, a mutated white spider. But the mutated white spider has already been promoted to the rank of a demon beast, how could an ordinary woman drive it? However, although he felt very confused in his heart, Zhang Fenjai did not show it, but followed Shen Loxi's footsteps into the turtle restaurant. The turtle restaurant, which looks ordinary, is actually a different world with jagged rocks, pavilions, carved railings, jade bricks, and small bridges and flowing water. Mr. Shen, I'm really sorry. The business in the store has been too busy recently. I was not able to personally see Chairman Shen off for the last time. I feel really ashamed. Just as Zhang Fenjai was standing in front of the counter and looking at the interior of the turtle restaurant, a stunning beauty wearing a white chef's coat, who looked no less than Shen Loxi, but had a slightly better figure, quickly walked out from behind a door curtain next to the counter. Then, the stunning beauty held Shen Loxi's jade hand tightly, and apologized repeatedly with a look of self-blame. Boss Xiao, it's okay, I can understand. Shen Loxi shook her head and comforted with a trace of loneliness in her eyes. Mr. Shen, as my impoliteness, all the expenses today are not only waived, but I will also cook a table of delicious dishes for you personally. Shen Loxi's considerate comfort made Xiao Yu's face more ashamed, and he quickly made compensation generously and directly blocked the possibility of Shen Loxi's refusal. Don't reject me, otherwise, I won't be able to find peace in my heart. Okay then, Shen Loxi finally nodded in agreement. After getting Shen Loxi's consent, Xiao Yu secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and cast her eyes on Zhang Fenjai standing beside her, asking with a hint of playfulness in her eyes. Who is this? Boss Xiao, his name is Zhang Fenjai, and he is my boyfriend. Shen Loxi boldly introduced Zhang Fenjai by holding his arm. Breaking through her inner shyness and directly confessing her relationship with her boyfriend was also a helpless move for her. Because the boss Xiao in front of her not only looks as good as herself, but also has a hotter and more attractive figure, and she has mastered the top cooking skills that can capture a man's stomach and keep his heart. In order to avoid Zhang Fenjai's potential excellence from arousing the other party's interest, she could only cut off the other party's thoughts in advance. Although her appearance is not very outstanding, with her clear eyes and calm temperament, Mr. Zhang can tell at a glance that she is a successful person who is loyal to her. After a brief look, Xiao Yu's eyes flashed with a hint of disappointment, and she praised reluctantly. In this regard, Shen Loxi not only did not have the slightest dissatisfaction, but secretly breathed a sigh of relief and quickly said goodbye to Xiao Yu, then took Zhang Fenjai straight to the private room on the second floor. Before turning around and leaving the counter, Zhang Fenjai glanced at Xiao Yu's slightly pale palm, and a hint of understanding flashed in his eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 433. In Xiaozu Turtle Restaurant. The mutated white spiders, like the poisonous insects in southern Xinjiang, are not only very small and exquisite, but also need to swallow the blood of living creatures to obtain energy for growth and promotion. The reason why Xiao's right hand is as pale as frost is because the white widow hides in the flesh and blood of her palm, constantly sucking the blood flowing into her palm, which is the real reason why she can make delicious dishes. Because the hallucinogenic venom emitted by the white widow can be evenly integrated into the dishes after the perfect blending of the palm. At the same time, through the perfect control of the 5 fingers of the palm, the amount of venom integrated into the dishes can be determined, reaching the level of controlling the diner's sobriety and confusion at will. However, the only thing that makes Zhang Fenjai feel a little puzzled is that although the white widow's body is small and exquisite, the mutated monster physique makes it need a lot of blood. So much that even with Xiao Yu's physique as an ordinary woman, it is not enough to satisfy the blood it needs for its daily survival, let alone the huge blood energy needed to improve its cultivation and strength. So, how does Xiao Yu usually support the White Widow? Looking at Shen Loxi walking towards the elegant room on the second floor, Xiao Yu's left hand gently patted the back of his right hand, and whispered to himself with a cold light in his eyes. The blood of 3 virgins with rich yin is enough to satisfy the blood energy needed for the Holy Spirit to advance. It seems that I will soon be qualified to return to Wuvahu in the provincial capital and compete with Ruolayu for the ability of the Holy Maiden of the 5 Beasts section. Yezi, how is the environment of Xiaozu Turtle Restaurant? Shen Loxi asked with a hint of fascination in her eyes, bringing Zhang Fenjai to the wooden railing on the second floor and pointing to the first floor with rugged rocks and flowing water in front of her. Peach blossoms and flowing water go away, there is another world that is not the human world. Zhang Fenjai praised against his will with a line from a poem by Li Bai, a poet of the Tang dynasty. The environment here is really good. It's against his will because the environment in front of him seems beautiful, but in fact it is messy and has no rules. If it weren't for the White Widow in Xiao Yu's palm, the layout in front of him completely violated the feng shui pattern, and he would have closed down long ago. Yezi, do you think there is a place suitable for building a southern garden in Ningji City? Shen Loxi asked with a yearning look in his eyes, leaning his head gently on Zhang Fenjai's shoulder. Yes. Thinking of the abandoned Suchame coal mine, after the self-explosion of the fire element and the earth element, it will quickly form a peculiar feng shui pattern close to the southern climate within 3 to 5 months, Zhang Fenjai nodded and replied. That piece of feng shui treasure land is not only suitable for building a large number of garden villas with independent doors and courtyards, but the price of the land sold by the government is probably so low that you can't even imagine it, and it does not involve any demolition and reconstruction. Where? Shen Loxi asked excitedly, immediately with the instinctive consciousness of a businessman. Keep it secret for now. I'll tell you when the right opportunity comes. Everything I just said is based on the feng shui speculation of yin-yang and the five elements. As for whether the Suchame coal mine, where the fire and earth elements exploded, will eventually become what I guessed, it still needs to be investigated on the spot, so Zhang Fengjai did not reveal too much for the time being. Yezi, let's go to the private room first. Building the courtyard of Yuanlin was just a momentary feeling. So, facing Zhang Jiyi's temporary secrecy, Shen Loxi did not continue to ask, but suggested going to the private room to wait for the delicious food that Xiao Yu had carefully prepared. Okay. When he nodded in agreement and turned around to enter the private room, a thin boy suddenly appeared in front of the rockery, which made him flash a trace of doubt in his eyes. However, Shen Loxi, who stretched out his hand to hold his arm, did not give him more opportunities to observe the thin boy, and was forcibly taken into the private room marked with beautiful mountains and clear waters. Different from the private rooms in ordinary hotels and restaurants, the private rooms with beautiful scenery are not only spacious, but also the tables and chairs used for dining are all made of green bamboo, and 4 pictures of the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter are hung on the walls on all 4 sides. Not only is the layout full of warmth and elegance, which can make people feel peaceful and calm, but the completely shielded sound insulation effect creates a unique atmosphere of romance and ambiguity. So, seeing Shen Loxi with a slightly blushing face, Zhang Fengjai immediately felt the impulse of his heart. Ding ding dong dong. But at this moment, the wind chime hanging at the door suddenly rang, which not only destroyed the romantic and ambiguous momentum, but also forced Zhang Fengjai to suppress the impulse of his heart and get up to open the wooden door of the private room. Then, a young and beautiful waitress entered the private room with a set of tea sets and said in a pleasant voice, "Mr. Shen, Mr. Zhang, hello, this is a pot of top-grade Biluakan tea our boss gave you for free." Putting the tea set on the bamboo table, the waitress skillfully completed the entire tea-making process and quietly left the private room. Yezi, have a taste, Shen Loxi, holding up the exquisite teacup, gestured with an elegant demeanor. Loxi, wait a moment. After speaking out to stop Shen Loxi from preparing to taste the tea, Zhang Fengjai first took off the lid of the teapot and took a look at the Biluakan tea leaves in the teapot. Slowly stretching, flying up and down. Reaching out to pick up the exquisite teacup, he took a closer look at the tea in the cup. Silvery green, rich color. Put it between your nose and take a sip of the tea fragrance. The fragrance is refreshing and refreshing. Good tea, good tea, good tea. After praising 3 times in succession, Zhang Fengjai put the delicate teacup back on the tray, then reached out to grab the exquisite teacup from Shen Loxi's hand, and put it back on the tray as well. Yezi, what's wrong? Zhang Fengjai's weird behavior made Shen Loxi couldn't help but frown and asked. Although it is good tea, it is not easy to drink, Zhang Fengjai replied calmly. Why? Since it is the top Biluakan, why can't it be tasted properly? So Shen Loxi asked even more puzzledly. Loxi, Biluakan is a type of tea. It has the effect of breaking down protein and fat. It is a tea suitable for drinking after meals, Zhang Fengjai explained again against his will. Because when I smelled the tea fragrance of Biluakan just now, in addition to the inherent fragrance of Biluakan, there was also a faint sweet smell. And this sweet smell is exactly the same as the aroma of the dishes smelled outside Xiaozu Turtle restaurant, which is the poisonous gas unique to White Widow. So that's what happened. Shen Loxi, who didn't feel any doubt at all, nodded in realization and said to Zhang Chenai with a smile. Yezi, if you like drinking tea, I can ask a few classmates in the south to buy some top-notch and rare teas for you. Okay. After Zhang Fengjai nodded in agreement without refusing, he suddenly stood up and opened the wooden door of the private room. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 434. Xiaozu Turtle Restaurant. When Xiao was about to reach out to pull the wind chime rope tied outside the private room, the wooden door of the private room was suddenly opened, which made Xiao's expression slightly stunned, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Boss Xiao, Zhang Fengjai, who was standing at the door of the private room, greeted Xiao without any surprise. Mr. Zhang. After forcibly suppressing the doubts that emerged in his heart, Xiao greeted gently and signaled the 4 waiters behind him to place the 5 famous dishes representing the Shandong style and 2 pots of special fenjiu neatly on the bamboo table. In addition to the signature dish of braised turtle, the 5 special Shandong dishes are fried double crisps, first-class tofu, sweet and sour carp, jar meat, and soup willow leaf bird's nest. Whether it is the appearance and color of the dishes, or the tempting aroma that comes to the nose, Shen Loxi can't help licking her lips. After signaling the waiter to leave, Xiao Yu personally prepared the bowls and chopsticks and placed them in front of Shen Loxi and Zhang Fengjai, then smiled and signaled. Mr. Shen, Mr. Zhang, how about trying Xiao Yu's cooking? After stretching his foot to touch Shen Loxi, who was about to enjoy the delicious food with bamboo chopsticks, Zhang Fengjai smiled and turned to Xiao Yu to remind him. Boss Xiao, today is my first date with Loxi after we fell in love. Do you think we should go first? Although Zhang Fengjai didn't say all the words of reminder, the shrewd Xiao Yu already knew what to do next. So, after she showed a hint of ambiguity on her face, she turned around and left the private room, reaching out to close the wooden door of the private room. However, at the moment when the wooden door was closed, the smile on Xiao Yu's face was instantly replaced by gloom, and then she quickly left the second floor and returned to the kitchen. Yezi, what's wrong with you today? It's okay that the biluakun tea after the meal is not allowed to be drunk, but now even the delicious dishes with good color, fragrance, and taste are not allowed to be eaten, which makes Shen Loxi slightly unhappy and asks. Without answering Shen Loxi's question for the time being, Zhang Fengjai, who was smiling instead of gloomy, took out 4 forbidden talismans from his sleeves and pasted them on the 4 corners of the private room. Then, he took out 2 evil-breaking talismans and 1 evil-breaking talisman, and pasted the 2 evil-breaking talismans under the wooden door and the bamboo table respectively, and handed the evil-breaking talisman to Shen Loxi. Then, he picked up the bamboo chopsticks and mixed up the 4 dishes of braised turtle, fried double crisps, first-class tofu and sweet and sour carp, and began to answer Shen Loxi's question. Loxi, whether it is the top biluakun or the 6 exquisite dishes, they are all mixed with venom that can make people hallucinate. How is it possible? The bamboo chopsticks in his hand fell directly on the bamboo table, and Shen Loxi's eyes showed an unbelievable look. Loxi, even the former emperor's royal chef can't make delicious dishes that make people linger. Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed a sneer of disdain, and he pointed to the dishes in front of him and explained. A girl who is only about 20 years old can make the best food in the world. Yezi, what kind of venom is it? Why did Xiao Yu do this? Knowing that Zhang Fengjai would not deceive her, Shen Loxi believed his explanation just now, and a lot of questions emerged in her heart. I don't know the specific name of the venom. I only know that it is a venom contained in the body of a mutant spider called the White Widow. It can improve the taste of dishes several times, and it can also cause short-term amnesia and fainting. After answering Shen Loxi's first question, Zhang Fengjai turned his head and glanced at the wooden door of the elegant room, and said with a cold light in his eyes. As for the reason why Xiao Yu did this, I'm afraid she needs to reveal it herself. Speaking of this, Zhang Fengjai crawled to Shen Loxi's ear and whispered in her ear. Okay, I'll do as you say. After nodding to agree with Zhang Fengjai's instructions, Shen Loxi said very self-blamingly. Yezi, I'm so sorry. Not only did I not let you eat good food today, but I also caused you to fall into someone else's trap. Only when men and women cooperate with each other can they reach the most perfect state. This is why he is willing to go to Zhuang Jian's apartment. After all, Zhuang Jian, who is good at learning skills and boldly cooperating with postures, can reach the most perfect state every time she fights. So, After hearing Shen Loxi's self-blaming apology, Zhang Fenjai, with a turn of his eyes, whispered in her ear. "Loxi, can we do it like in the Japanese movies tonight?" After hearing Zhang Fenjai's explicit proposal, Shen Loxi lowered her head in shame, but her self-blame and inner expectations made her answer very quietly. "Okay." Although the voice of agreement was very small, it was not only very clear and loud in the quiet private room, but also like an alluring magic, which made Zhang Fenjai feel hot and wanted to hold Shen Loxi in his arms. But at this moment, a very faint breathing sound suddenly came from outside the private room. SHH. After placing his finger on his lips to signal Shen Loxi to be quiet, Zhang Fenjai closed his eyes and drove his mind away from the sea of consciousness. When he saw Xiao Yu using the jade bowl to eavesdrop on the private room, he nodded to Shen Loxi, then reached out and pressed her Tiantu and Tanzong points. Then, he held her head and gently placed it on the bamboo table. Then, he restrained his own breath fluctuations and also climbed on the bamboo table. The waiting time was not very long, only about a minute, and the wooden door of the private room was gently pushed open, and then gently closed. Then, he heard Xiao Yu's respectful and excited voice. "Holy Spirit, the delicious pure yin blood has been prepared for you, please come out and enjoy it now." As Xiao Yu's respectful voice fell, a white spider with a milky white body and a size of a soybean appeared on Shen Loxi's pink neck. Then, when the white spider raised a sharp long leg on its forehead and was about to cut the flesh of the pink neck, Zhang Fenjai's right hand, which had been placed on the bamboo table in advance, quickly pinched the spell to drive the evil-breaking talisman in Shen Loxi's hand. Bang! Just when the flame formed by the evil-breaking talisman directly forced the white spider to fly away, Zhang Fenjai mobilized the grey energy of Danshan to cover his right hand and grabbed the white spider as fast as a gust of wind. "You are not poisoned," Xiao Yu, who suddenly retreated a few steps, shouted in horror. Ignoring Xiao Yu's question, Zhang Fenjai quickly untied Shen Loxi's acupuncture points with his left hand, and immediately mobilized more of the grey energy in his danshan into his palm, intending to directly shock the white spider in his palm to death. But at this moment, Xiao Yu, with the cold light flashing in his eyes, suddenly took out a sharp boning knife from the pocket of his white coat and stabbed Zhang Fenjai's waist directly. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 435. Xiaozu soft-shell turtle restaurant, amidst beautiful scenery and elegant rooms. Crack. However, just when the boning knife was less than 20 centimeters away from Zhang Fenjai's waist, a plate of fried oil and double crunch hit Xiao's face directly. The moment of blindness and pain caused her to throw away the boning knife in her hand and quickly clean the foreign matter on her face. As a white widow who advanced to the realm of monster beasts, although she possessed strong physical defense and strength, she was limited by her cultivation at the 9th level of qi condensation. Under the ever-increasing envelope of grey energy, she was eventually shocked to death. Throwing the shocked white spider directly onto the bamboo table, Zhang Fenjai turned around and looked at Xiao, who was cleaning the foreign matter on his face, his expression gradually becoming serious. When Shen Loxi saw the white spider thrown onto the bamboo table, there was a look of surprise in her eyes. Because the white spider in front of her, which Zhang Fenjai called the White Widow, was not only small and exquisite, but also very cute, and its entire body was a milky white color like jade. Xiao, who quickly cleaned up the leftovers on his face and regained clarity of vision, saw the white spider that Zhang Fenjai threw on the bamboo table, motionless and lifeless, and his face instantly turned pale as paper. At the same time, his eyes revealed, he said to himself with a frightened expression. "No, no, that's impossible." Then, Xiao turned her head and looked directly at Zhang Fenjai, not hiding the strong murderous intent in her eyes. "Yezi, what's wrong with Xiao?" The conspiracy was discovered, her backers were killed, and Xiao lost all her dependents. If she didn't kneel down to beg for mercy, didn't turn around and run away immediately, but instead used her eyes full of murderous intent to provoke Zhang Fengjai. Wouldn't it be that the old man hanged himself? He was impatient to live. The spider poison backfired and turned into a half-demon. Zhang Fengjai replied with a solemn expression. Yezi, what do you mean? The too mysterious explanation made Shen Loxi ask even more puzzled. The white spider known as the White Widow is a mutated spider monster. Just like the goo worms in southern Xinjiang, it needs a carrier to continuously provide blood during its growth. Seeing Xiao, who had not had any abnormal changes yet, Zhang Fengjai took the opportunity to explain. At the same time, what is very different from goo worms is that the venom in goo worms is stable and will not easily affect the carrier that cultivates it. However, the venom in White Widow's body is extremely violent. At the moment of hatching, the venom will continue to penetrate the carrier, eventually turning the carrier into a powerful monster that is neither human nor monster. As soon as Zhang Fengjai finished his explanation, Xiao's eyes filled with hatred gradually turned a frightening scarlet color, and the teeth on both sides of his lips quickly grew longer and pointed. Ah! After the last trace of black and white in his pupils was completely replaced by scarlet, Xiao suddenly looked up to the sky and roared. Fortunately, the partition effect in the elegant room was good, and the roaring sound was not transmitted. Along with the ear-piercing roar, Xiao's clothes were torn apart by the 8 long legs that suddenly stretched out from her body. In the end, she turned into a stunning beauty whose upper body was made of a red fruit and whose lower body was a ferocious spider monster. Human face spider. When seeing the combination of beautiful and ugly spider monster in front of her, Shen Loxi felt very scared, but she also shouted with excitement in her heart. No, it's a human face spider beast. After shaking his head to refute Shen Loxi's name for the monster in front of him, Zhang Fengjai's expression gradually became serious. The reason why he used 4 sealing talismans to seal Yajian beforehand was to directly deal with the White Widow and Xiao without alerting anyone. But now, when he saw the human-faced spider beast slowly lifting its body, reaching the roof of the private room with a height of more than 3 meters, and the aura it exuded reaching the peak of the 4th level of foundation building, he was a little worried that he would not be able to control the next battle. Logo 11, stay back. Turning his head to warn Shen Loxi, Zhang Fengjai quickly squeezed out the 4 sealing talismans that drove the magic spell to avoid the powerful aura emitted by the human-faced spider beast from disturbing the diners and waiters outside the private room. Immediately afterwards, he continued to squeeze the driving evil talisman of the magic spell, and the scorching flames formed by controlling the talisman with his mind directly attacked the long legs and soft abdomen of the human-faced spider beast. Facing the 2 talisman flames that burned its legs and abdomen, the human-faced spider beast, which retained Xiao's upper body, directly spit out 2 balls of white silk pulp to wrap the talisman flames to prevent the damage caused by the talisman flames. Immediately afterwards, it quickly raised its 2 sharp legs and stabbed Zhang Fengjai's chest and back one after another. In this regard, Zhang Fengjai, who was not at all panicked, mobilized the spiritual power of his dantian to quickly condense a sharp sword, and slashed at 2 long legs one after another at the speed of the wind. Bang, bang. Accompanied by 2 crisp collision sounds, the human-faced spider beast quickly retracted its long legs that were almost severed, and then opened its mouth and sprayed out 2 balls of white silk slurry, shooting at Zhang Fengjai and Shen Loxi, who retreated to the corner. He appeared in front of Shen Loxi, and with the sharp sword in his hand, he quickly used a move to split Huashan Mountain. The tangible grey sword energy shot out instantly, directly cut through the white silk pulp, and then hit one of the long legs of the human-faced spider beast with undiminished power. Crack! After easily cutting off the first hard leg, the power only consumed half of the grey sword energy, and then chopped off the second long leg on the abdomen. Crack! Accompanied by the second crisp snapping sound, when the energy of the grey sword energy was completely consumed, it also cut off the second long leg of the human-faced spider beast. The 2 long legs that were cut off one after the other caused the human-faced spider beast, which had not really adapted to the transformation, to fall to the ground. At the same time, a sharp long leg at the tail directly pierced the wooden door of the private room. Puff, puff. But to Zhang Fenji's surprise, the wooden door pierced by the sharp long leg made two piercing sounds in succession. One of the sounds was relatively hard, and the other was relatively weak. Just when Zhang Fenji was puzzled, the wooden door of the private room was suddenly shattered, and a thin boy whose chest was pierced by a sharp long leg slapped the long leg with a ferocious look. Pa! Accompanied by a crisp breaking sound, the hard and sharp long leg was directly broken by the thin boy's palm. Not daring to pull out the remaining long leg in his chest, the thin boy looked at Zhang Fenji with hatred, quickly took out a pill and swallowed it, then turned around and planned to leave. With a frightening cold light flashing in his eyes, Zhang Fenji, holding the sword tightly, planned to use the Qingfeng step to chase the thin boy. But at this moment, the human-faced spider beast, which had already lost 3 long legs, showed a crazy look in its eyes, and then swung the 4th and 5th sharp long legs, stabbing at the thin boy one after another. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yuchi. Chapter 436. Xiao Turtle House. Damn evil beast. Feeling the chill coming from behind, the thin young man turned around suddenly and cursed, and a sharp sword condensed by spiritual power immediately appeared in his right hand, directly blocking the 4th long leg that was stabbing. One was an attack with all the strength, and the other was a hasty resistance. The final result of the fight was that the thin young man felt numb at the tiger's mouth, and the sharp sword condensed by spiritual power in his hand almost slipped out of his hand. And when the 5th sharp long leg stabbed, the thin young man, who was already unable to resist, could only quickly choose to dodge. But the left side of the corridor was the wall of the box, which was not only very solid, but also had limited space for dodging. In desperation, the thin young man could only choose the right side of the corridor, which was the rocky layout on the 1st floor. Puff. Although there was a temporary spiritual power protection, the impact force formed by the free fall and gravity acceleration, as well as the collision force with the jagged rocks, made the thin boy who fell heavily on the rocks spit out a mouthful of blood, and then his head tilted and fainted. When he saw the direction in which the thin boy chose to dodge, Zhang Fenji, with a gleam in his eyes, immediately appeared beside the human-faced spider. While her attention was on the thin boy, the sword in his hand pierced through the back of her head and completely took her life. Without the slightest hesitation, he quickly drew back the sword and rushed out of the private room, jumped directly out of the corridor and jumped towards the jagged rocks, and then landed steadily beside the thin young man who fainted. Brother, are you okay? Can you hold on? Since there were diners and waiters standing around to watch, Zhang Fenji could only pretend to greet with concern while pretending to observe the injury and carefully check his body. Finally, a black token, an exquisite porcelain bottle, 3 old-looking talismans, and a luxury car key were found in the sleeves and pockets of the thin boy. Picking out the black jade pendant and taking a closer look, Zhang Fenji couldn't help but change his expression, and his breathing gradually became heavier. Because the white token was engraved with the word Qing on the front and 2 crossed small swords on the back, this showed that the thin boy in front of him was from the Qing Cheng sect, one of the 10 major sects of Taoism. At the same time, according to the color and pattern of the token, it showed that the thin boy had outstanding talent and potential, and his cultivation reached the foundation building realm of the inner sect disciple. Thinking that the other party was not only secretly standing outside the private room to eavesdrop, but also looking at him with hatred, Zhang Fenji's eyes flashed with a strong murderous intent. Brother, hold on, the ambulance will be here soon. Then, he held the thin boy's right hand tightly, cheering and encouraging him while mobilizing the gray energy to forcibly destroy the meridians and dantian in the other party's body. The intense pain caused by the damage in the body immediately woke up the fainted thin boy. When he saw Zhang Fengjai squatting in front of him, the thin boy's face changed slightly, and a trace of horror flashed in his eyes. When he felt the meridians and dantian in his body being forcibly destroyed by a powerful and domineering energy, the fear and despair that emerged in his heart instantly made him feel black before his eyes and fainted again. After using the grey energy to completely destroy the meridians and dantian in the thin boy's body, Zhang Fengjai forced a trace of grey energy into his heart, then stood up and took out his mobile phone to dial 120. After hanging up the hospital's ambulance call, he started to contact Zhuang Jian again, and then told her in detail about the White Widow and the human-faced spider beast. After hanging up the phone and putting away the phone, he looked up and winked at Shen Loxi, then walked out of the first-floor hall. When he walked out of Xiaozu Turtle Hall and came to the front yard, Zhang Fengjai thought of the luxury car key he had just searched, and quickly took it out and pressed it. Then, a slightly familiar black SUV flashed its lights. It seems that the inner disciples of Qing Cheng sect did not spy on me on a whim, but had been secretly following me for a long time. Thinking of the black SUV parked on the side of the road when he left Xintang building in Shen Loxi's sports car, Zhang Fengjai secretly guessed in his heart, and a look of doubt appeared in his eyes. Because of the Taoist sect's closure of the mountain, he and Qing Cheng sect not only had no grudges, but also had no contact with each other. So, why did the inner disciples of Qing Cheng sect follow him? Yezi, let's go. However, Shen Loxi, who returned to the sports car, did not give him time to continue thinking deeply. While greeting him, she started to turn the sports car around. After crushing the car key in his hand, Zhang Fengjai quickly got into the sports car and gave Shen Loxi instructions. Loxi, let's go back to the villa. Okay. Whether it was the second ambush on the road or the trap she almost fell into just now, Shen Loxi was still frightened and wanted to return to the villa, back to the home where she felt safe and warm. So, facing Zhang Fengjai's order, she nodded and agreed to leave Xiaozu Turtle Restaurant quickly. And just after they left, the human-faced spider beast whose head was pierced by a sharp sword suddenly shook its cold and stiff body, which also scared the countless diners and waiters who came to visit. As its body shook, the human-faced spider beast's tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, shook its head back and forth, and then stood up with its 5 long legs supporting its body. Originally, the wounds from the sword and the scattered long hair covered the appearance of the human-faced spider beast, but as she shook her head and stood up, her peerless appearance was immediately revealed. When the diners and waiters who were fleeing in the surroundings accidentally saw the appearance of the human-faced spider beast, they all showed an unbelievable look in their eyes. Because they could not imagine that the terrifying monster in front of them would have the same appearance as Xiao Yu. Ignoring the diners and waiters who were fleeing in the surroundings, the human-faced spider beast, whose scarlet eyes were replaced by black and white, said to himself with a smug smile on his face. The sharp sword condensed from special energy can actually erase the backlash damage caused by the White Widow's poison, allowing me to regain my original consciousness while retaining the powerful ability to transform into a monster. Ruolayu. Ruolayu, even if the Holy Spirit in your body successfully upgrades to the Red Widow, you will only have the strength of the first level of foundation building at most. And my strength after Xiaoyuan has reached the peak of the 4th level of foundation building. What can you use to fight me then? Zhang Fengjai, do you think I should thank you for your love for me, or eat you to avenge my hatred? The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 437. Xiaozu Soft Shell Turtle Restaurant. However, when a rush of ambulance bells suddenly sounded outside the turtle restaurant, Xiao immediately put away the proud smile on her face and jumped directly to the lobby on the first floor to leave the turtle restaurant. But at this moment, she unexpectedly saw the thin young man who had fainted. Thinking of the thin boy breaking one of his sharp legs, Xiao's eyes flashed with cold light, and she walked to the skinny boy with 5 long legs. Then, she raised a long leg from her chest and pierced the lean boy's abdomen directly. The thin boy, whose abdomen was pierced, once again woke up from a coma due to severe pain. When he saw the sharp legs piercing his abdomen and the sinister murderous intent in the eyes of Xiao, who had a peerless appearance, the thin young man looked threatening with endless fear. Evil beast, I am still one of the 10 major sects of the Taoist section Rong Yajiang, an inner disciple of Duan Yufeng of the Qing Cheng sect. Put me down quickly. Otherwise, my senior brothers and elders will never easily let go of you and the forces behind you. When she heard Rong Yajiang's threat, a look of fear flashed in Xiao's eyes. As the preparatory saint of the Five Beasts sect, she is very aware of the power of the 10 major sects of the Taoist sect, and she also knows the character of the Qing Cheng sect's guardian. However, when he saw the sharp legs piercing the opponent's abdomen and the scars left when the human-faced spider beast pierced the opponent's chest, the fearful look in his eyes was gradually replaced by a sinister murderous intent. Immediately afterwards, Xiao's open cherry mouth instantly turned into a spider's bloody mouth, and then she swallowed the cursing Rong Yajiang directly into her body. Not bad, not bad. Extending her long tongue and licking her lips, Xiao sighed with an expression of enjoyment on her face. Not only does the meat taste delicious and delicate, but the flesh and blood contains unimaginable essence energy, which is enough to help me reach the 5th level of foundation building in the shortest possible time. It seems that if there is a chance in the future, I will still have to devour more disciples of the Taoist section. However, when several medical staff in white coats appeared in front of the glass door of the turtle house, Xiao immediately put away her inner sigh and quickly passed through the fire escape behind the rockery and returned to her temporary resting room. Then, the 5 sharp long legs quickly retracted into the body, and 2 slender and straight white jade legs quickly stretched out from the tail. Through the mirror hanging on the wall of the room, when she carefully looked at the charming and enchanting beauty in the mirror, Xiao's eyes showed joy and satisfaction. Immediately afterwards, she picked out a few fashionable and sexy clothes from the wardrobe, and after simply tidying up her makeup, she confidently stepped out of the room, and then went to deal with the chaos and trouble caused by her transformation into a human-faced spider beast. At the moment when Xiao swallowed Rong Yajiang, Zhang Fenjai, who was leaning on the seat of the sports car with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. His face was slightly ferocious, but there was a look of pain and confusion in his eyes. Since the meridians and dantian of the inner disciples of the Qing Cheng sect have been destroyed, and an undying hatred has been formed between them, he will definitely not leave any hidden dangers to himself. Therefore, he left a trace of gray energy in the skinny boy's heart beforehand, intending to wait until he was rescued in the hospital to directly destroy the heart and send him to death. In this way, hidden dangers can be completely eliminated and one's own suspicions can be cleared. But just now, the trace of gray energy integrated into the heart of the thin young man not only disappeared inexplicably, but also the trace of thought used to control the gray energy was destroyed, causing slight trauma to the soul. After taking a deep breath and forcibly suppressing the pain caused by the trauma to his soul, Zhang Fenjai took out his mobile phone and found Zhuang Jian's phone number, then dialed it directly. The call was not very long, only about 30 seconds. When Zhang Fenjai hung up the phone, the look of doubt in his eyes became even stronger. Because Zhuang Jian told him on the phone that the human-faced spider beast whose head was pierced by a sharp sword not only did not die, but also devoured the severely injured skinny boy. What's even more incredible is that Xiao, who suffered the poisonous backlash of the White Widow, not only appeared in the turtle house unscathed, but also became more charming than before. If it weren't for the diners and waiters in the store who had witnessed the existence of the human-faced spider beast, Zhuang Jian would have even suspected that he was hallucinating. The sword was condensed from the gray energy in the dantian, and he personally pierced the head with the sword, so he was 100% sure that the human-faced spider beast was completely dead. So what is the reason why the human-faced spider beast came back from the dead? According to records in Taoist scriptures, the host that suffers the poisonous backlash of the White Widow will not only turn into a monster with a human face, but also undergo permanent and irreversible changes. So, how did Xiao get rid of the poisonous backlash and return to her original appearance? If you want to find out what happened to the human-faced spider beast and Xiao, you can only return to the Xiaozu turtle house to capture Xiao alive. Therefore, when Zhang Fengjai turned around and wanted to tell Shen Loxi to turn around and go back, she unexpectedly saw crystal clear tears falling from her eyes drop by drop. "Loxi, what's wrong with you?" Zhang Fengjai asked worriedly. "Yezi, do you think I'm a bad luck star?" Shen Loxi, with a lonely look in his eyes, laughed at himself with a hint of hoarseness. "Otherwise, how could my father be so cruel as to swallow poison and commit suicide? How could my mother leave the Shen family so heartlessly, and how could my grandparents who loved and spoiled me want to swallow up the Yongshen group? Even if I wanted to have a quiet meal with you, I could fall into Xiao's trap and attract the terrifying human-faced spider beast. Loxi, stop the car." Knowing that the series of tragic experiences in recent times had already made Shen Loxi's psychological endurance reach its limit, the ruined candlelight dinner was like the last straw that broke the camel's back, causing her to completely collapse. So, Zhang Fengjai motioned her to park the sports car safely on the side of the road, reached out and held her cheek, and then kissed her affectionately. The psychological collapse and the sweet impact made Shen Loxi gradually unable to control her emotions and reached out to untie. But Zhang Fengjai, who suddenly stopped the affectionate impact, held her hands and stopped her. "Loxi, this is your first time, I can't let you have any regrets, let's go back to the villa." The confused eyes gradually regained clarity, and Shen Loxi not only did not feel the slightest disappointment in her heart, but instead nodded with endless sweetness, then stepped on the accelerator and drove straight to Guanghe Huafu. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 438. In the Shen family villa. Looking at Shen Loxi, who was in deep sleep, with a faint sweet smile on her face, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with tenderness. After covering her with a blanket, he stood up and walked to the windowsill of the bedroom, then looked up at the starry sky, and the tenderness in his eyes was gradually replaced by contemplation. When Shen Loxi was emotionally broken and self-deprecating, the tragic experiences he described touched the questions in his heart that he had never been willing to think deeply about. Whether it was Shen Loxi, Sulitzi, Zhuang Jian and Xiao Yuxuan, before they knew and contacted him, their lives were as calm and peaceful as the lake. But since meeting and getting to know him, the calm lake surface was like a huge rock thrown into it, not only causing magnificent waves, but also causing them to fall into endless troubles and disasters. Could it be that he was the huge rock that smashed the waves, the unlucky star that Shen Loxi mentioned? The thoughtful look was gradually replaced by self-blame, and a trace of white flame slowly appeared in the self-blame. As the white flames burning in his eyes became more and more intense, the quiet gray energy in his dantian gradually boiled. As the gray energy in his dantian continued to boil, a devouring force slowly formed from the top of his head, and began to forcibly gather the star power cast by the stars in the sky, the thin spiritual energy of heaven and earth around the villa, and the yin and evil spirits remaining in the air. At the same time, the uncontrolled Hunyuan taking heart method transformed all the gathered star power, spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and yin and evil energy into gray energy and poured into his dantian. As more and more gray energy poured into his dantian, the energy boiled more, and finally began to continuously impact his dantian, meridians, and internal organs. Whether it was the severe pain caused by the impact on his dantian, meridians, and internal organs, or the blood that kept flowing from the corners of his mouth, Zhang Fengjai, who was standing quietly in front of the windowsill, did not react at all. In his eyes looking up at the starry sky, the burning white flames had begun to cover half of his face. "Yezi, what are you looking at?" But at this moment, a gentle and charming voice suddenly came from behind him, which quickly extinguished the white flames burning in his eyes. Puff, puff, puff. When the white flames in his eyes were replaced by clarity, Zhang Fengjai spit out 3 mouthfuls of blood in succession, then sat down cross-legged with his knees bent, and then used his mind to forcibly stop the operation of the Hunyuan taking heart method and suppress the riot of the grey energy in his danshan. Yezi, what's wrong with you? Zhang Fengjai's sudden spitting of blood and sitting cross-legged with his knees bent made Shen Loxi's face suddenly change. He quickly sat up, then picked up the bath towel on the bedside and wrapped it around himself, and rushed to him quickly. Loxi, don't worry, I'm fine. After replying with his eyes barely open, Zhang Fengjai closed his eyes again and began to suppress and sort out the grey energy in his danshan. When the grey energy in the danshan completely calmed down, he quickly swallowed a healing pill given by his great-grandfather on the Mid-Autumn Festival. While using the power of the medicine to treat the damaged danshan, meridians and internal organs, he checked the reason why the grey energy in the danshan was out of control. Obsessed. Through a careful examination of his body and danshan, Zhang Fengjai finally knew the reason for the grey energy riot. It came from the backlash of the heart demon caused by self-blame and regret, which is commonly known as obsession. This made him suddenly feel confused. Because after the grey energy was deleted, the information conveyed to him by the Hunyuan taking heart method was to improve his strength without any bottlenecks and heart demons. Then, just a moment of self-blame and regret caused the backlash of the heart demon, which almost caused the rupture of the meridians and the self-explosion of the danshan. This shows that the Hunyuan taking heart method is not only not as invincible as he imagined, but also contains very serious and fatal hidden dangers. Thinking of this, he began to sort out the Hunyuan taking heart method again to see if his understanding at the beginning was wrong. Although the final result of sorting out the Hunyuan taking heart method is still no bottleneck and trouble of the heart demon, and can improve strength without limit, but I also found that I overlooked 2 key points. The first key point is the tolerance of the body and meridians to the grey energy. After the fusion of spiritual power and innate elemental power, the grey energy not only has the ability to absorb all energy, but also has several times or even dozens of times the defense and attack power of spiritual power and innate elemental power. Therefore, if you want to exert the full power of grey energy, you need to continuously enhance the toughness of the meridians and the grade of the body. The second key point is the reason why the Hunyuan taking heart method produces the heart demon. Being able to absorb all the energy between heaven and earth proves the strength and dominance of the Hunyuan taking heart method. The emotions of self-blame and regret belong to psychological retreat and weakness, which is equivalent to actively provoking the dominance of the Hunyuan taking heart method, and finally the heart method causes the backlash of the heart demon. Therefore, if you want to avoid the backlash of the heart demon caused by the heart method, you must make yourself ruthless and unrighteous. Only those who are heartless and ungrateful will not feel any remorse and regret in their hearts, and will not be troubled by any inner demons. Whether it is the 3 grandfathers who have raised and taught him, or the beloved Sulitzi, Shen Loxi, Zhuangjian and Xiao Yuxuan, they all determine that he cannot be a heartless and ungrateful person. Therefore, in order to completely eliminate the hidden danger of self-blame that caused the inner demon this time, Zhang Fengjai, who opened his eyes again, turned his head and asked Shen Loxi who was sitting next to him. Loxi, if you hadn't met me, wouldn't the chairman have committed suicide by poisoning, wouldn't Ms. Lu have left you heartlessly, wouldn't your Shen family and Lu family have completely broken up, and you wouldn't have fallen into Xiao's trap today? Seeing that Zhang Fengjai was also troubled by his own self-blame, Shen Loxi reached out to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth with a distressed hand, then rested her head on his legs, looked up and looked into his eyes and replied. Yezi, if I hadn't met you, not only would the things you just said still happen, but I would also be unfortunately reduced to a plaything. Have you forgotten that before we met and got to know each other, Zhu Ziqiang had already planted the soul-devouring goo in my brain? After hearing Shen Loxi's reply, Zhang Fengjai suddenly felt that the self-blame and regret in his heart began to gradually disappear, and a hint of enlightenment slowly appeared in his eyes. When he met Solitsi on the bus, the three people who wanted to kidnap her were already waiting in advance. If she hadn't met me, I'm afraid she would still not be able to avoid the fate of being insulted. When she met Zhuang Jian in the courtyard of the villa, she was chasing the Black Bolt King who had reached the foundation building stage. If she hadn't met me, I'm afraid she would still not be able to escape the counter-hunt of the Black Bolt King. When she met Xiao Yuxuan in the Dahao Entertainment City, she was doing part-time performing arts to make money. If she hadn't met me, with the lawless character of Ma Zhenglong of the Black Tiger Chamber of Commerce and Xiao Yuxuan's stunning appearance, I'm afraid she would not be able to escape the fate of being humiliated. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 439. In the Shen family villa. The moonlight and starlight near the windowsill clearly illuminate Zhang Fengjai's appearance. Looking at the resolute face and clear eyes, Shen Loxi couldn't help but reach out to touch his face, which also made Zhang Fengjai wake up from his deep thinking. After seeing Shen Loxi's pink and white skin and tender eyes, the impulse that instantly emerged in his abdomen made him pick up Shen Loxi directly and return to the soft and comfortable big bed. An hour and a half later, after watching the exhausted Shen Loxi fall asleep again, Zhang Fengjai moved his arm slightly so that she could sleep more comfortably, and then turned his head to look at the gradually dimming moonlight and starlight outside the window. Although Shen Loxi's explanation completely eliminated the hidden dangers brought by self-blame and regret, how should he deal with similar situations in the future? At that time, he could neither guarantee that there would be someone around him who could awaken his consciousness at any time, nor could he ensure that the person who awakened him could eliminate the hidden dangers of the inner demon. If you want to avoid this hidden danger and don't want to be a heartless person, then there is only one feasible way. Just like what I promised Solitsi, try not to provoke emotional debts that are easy to cause karma. Retracting his gaze from the window, looking down at the redness left on Shen Loxi's face after the love, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with a trace of tenderness. Then, he slowly closed his eyes and began to use his mind to check the extent of the increase in gray energy by the Hunyuan taking heart method when he was just suffering from the backlash of the heart demon. 1, 2, 4, 8 times. Zhang Fengjai suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes showed an unimaginable surprise. Because after a careful examination of his mind, he found that during the time of being possessed, the gray energy converted by the Hunyuan taking heart method was 8 times the total amount of the original Danshan. Some time ago, through the fight with the vampire Adrian, he had a general understanding of his own strength. Without using the swordsmanship and Taoist techniques taught by the third grandfather, and the martial arts taught by the second grandfather, he has the strength of the initial stage of the 6th level of foundation building. If all means are unleashed, he should be able to reach the peak of the 6th level of foundation building. At this time, with the 8-fold increase in the number of Danshan gray energy, his own strength can at least reach the high stage of the 7th level of foundation building, or the peak of the 7th level of foundation building. At this moment, he is about to face the challenge of the inner and core disciples of the 10 major sects of Taoism, which is undoubtedly as important as sending charcoal in the snow. Because he can rely on his own cultivation strength to kill those inner and core disciples who want to make trouble for him, and the life-saving trump card left behind can be used to deal with the elders and strong men behind those disciples. However, in order to fully exert the power of the gray energy in the Danshan, it is necessary to further improve the grade of the physical body, as well as the strength and toughness of the meridians. So, Zhang Fengjai quietly pulled out the arm of Shen Loxi's pillow and sneaked back to the guest room of Villa number 7, then took out the 1000-year-old blood lotus and 1000-year-old red fruit given by the Supernatural Research Institute, and returned to Shen Loxi's room. Then, he continued to sit cross-legged on the blanket, using the medicinal power of the 1,000-year-old blood lotus to specifically improve his body and meridians. After 5 crazy fights in one night, Shen Loxi, who had just experienced sex, slept soundly until 10:30 in the morning before waking up from a sweet dream. After scanning the room and not finding Zhang Fenjai's figure, she quietly lifted the blanket and took a look at the sheets. When she saw the bright red blood stains on the white sheets, a complex look appeared in her eyes. After getting up and folding the blood-stained sheets neatly, she put them in a wooden box that her mother had given her, and then turned around to take a bath. Shen Loxi unexpectedly saw Zhang Fenjai standing at the door, and her face instantly turned red and she lowered her head. Loxi, although I, Zhang Fenjai, am a sentimental and selfish bastard, I can guarantee that I am definitely not a heartless and unfaithful man. Walking in front of Shen Loxi and hugging her tightly in his arms, Zhang Fenjai glanced at the bed sheets placed in the wooden box and promised emotionally. Loxi, even if your appearance gets old in the future, my love for you will never change. Yezi, I love you. Zhang Fenjai's sincere confession and emotional promise made Shen Loxi, who was filled with endless sweetness, respond to his hug with all her strength. However, when she noticed the changes in Zhang Fenjai's body, she felt a sense of weakness that made her unable to continue to withstand the impact. She quickly pushed Zhang Fenjai away, picked up the towel and ran to the bathroom, begging for mercy. Yezi, I really can't stand it. Let me have a good rest. Can we continue at night? Okay. Knowing that Shen Loxi's physique could not be compared with Zhuang Jian, who practiced Taoism, her body would definitely not be able to withstand such fierce fighting. So, Zhang Fenjai took a deep breath, forced himself to suppress the changes in his body, nodded to agree to her request, and then turned around and left the bedroom to the first-floor hall. Master Zhang, are you ready for lunch? Seeing Zhang Fenjai sitting on the sofa in the living room, and looking up at Shen Loxi's bedroom, Su Shiqiang walked into the living room with a relieved smile in his eyes, and then asked with a hint of intimacy in his tone. Butler Su, wait a little longer. Thinking of the time it takes for girls to wash and put on makeup, Zhang Fenjai shook his head helplessly and reminded. Thinking of the 3 consecutive stalkings he encountered yesterday evening, Zhang Fenjai, who was worried about Shen Loxi's safety, personally escorted her to Yongsheng Group in Xintang Building, and then quietly left Xintang Building and took a taxi to a tea house about 5 miles away from the abandoned fertilizer plant. Looking up at the tea house plaque of Kingxinju, Zhang Fenjai slowly closed his eyes and drove his mind to leave the sea of consciousness space, and then soared into the top-floor room. Afterwards, he saw a middle-aged Taoist priest in his 40s, wearing a green Taoist robe and with a slightly feminine temperament, sitting cross-legged on a cushion. The familiar feminine aura made Zhang Fenjai know that the middle-aged Taoist priest in front of him was Wu Yuzhe, who had fought with him twice, and was also the backer behind the Zhuolong Group and Qinglong Chamber of Commerce. After retracting the idea of spying on Wu Yuzhe, Zhang Fenjai stepped into the tea house in front of him. Immediately afterwards, a pretty girl in a black professional suit, with an outstanding figure and a ponytail, took the initiative to greet him enthusiastically. Welcome. Sir, do you want to have tea in the lobby or in the private room? Girl, I'm not here for tea. After shaking his head to reject the choice given by the pretty girl, Zhang Fenjai looked up at the layout of the lobby, his eyes finally stopped at the stairs leading to the 2nd floor, and then said calmly. I came here today to meet your tea house owner Wu Yuzhe. The best physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 440. Kingxin lives in a tea house. Sir, I'm really sorry. Our boss never receives anyone, including some who claim to be friends of the boss. After turning sideways to block Zhang Fenjai's gaze on the stairs, the pretty girl's smile gradually disappeared and she flatly rejected his request. After looking at the other party up and down, he found that the pretty girl who secretly mobilized her inner strength was actually a master of the inner family who had reached the peak level. After a hint of enlightenment flashed in Zhang Fenjai's eyes, he shook his head with a smile and warned. Girl, although your skills are good, you are not qualified to refuse my request. Yet. After asking with a sneer, the pretty girl suddenly slapped Zhang Fenjai on the chest. In response to this, Zhang Fenjai neither fought back nor dodged to avoid it, letting the other party's white jade hand slap on his chest. Because he accidentally glanced at the face of the pretty girl just now and found that she was just a good girl with a relatively simple mind and knew how to repay kindness, so he could not bear to hurt her, but also hoped to use this to remind her that there are mountains outside the mountains, and there are people outside, so don't be impulsive when doing things for others. Bang! With a crisp sound of hitting, Zhang Fenjai was hit in the chest by the jade palm. Not only did his face not change at all, but his body also remained motionless. On the contrary, the pretty girl who took the initiative took 3 steps back, and her jade white palms immediately became red and swollen. You. Looking up at Zhang Fenjai, who was unharmed, the pretty girl had a look of disbelief in her eyes. Girl, even Wu Yuja, who taught you the internal skills and mental skills, would never hurt me at all, so you don't have to be so shocked. After smiling and comforting the pretty girl, Zhang Fenjai stepped towards the stairs leading to the 2nd floor. However, just as he walked to the stairs and was about to step onto the wooden steps, a green bamboo snake suddenly flew out from under the steps at the corner of the stairs and headed straight for his face. Facing the green bamboo snake that suddenly attacked, a disdainful sneer flashed in Zhang Fenjai's eyes, and his right hand filled with grey energy directly grasped the green bamboo snake at lightning speed. Immediately afterwards, the 5 fingers suddenly clenched hard, and the green bamboo snake with a body length of less than 20 centimeters was directly cut into 2 pieces, fell to the ground, writhed a few times, and then died completely. Then, he looked up at the middle-aged Taoist priest walking down the stairs. Zhang Fenjai, looking at the thin young man with a slight contemptuous sneer on his face, Wu Yuja asked indifferently. That's right. While nodding to acknowledge his identity, Zhang Fenjai further added. I am Zhang Fenjai who had 2 airborne battles with you. Zhang Fenjai, are you here today to apologize and return the 5 elements spirit orb, or do you want to have a 3rd fight with me to determine the outcome? Wu Yuja put his hands behind his back and asked quickly, assuming the posture of a strong man. None of that. After shaking his head to deny Wu Yuja's self-righteous question, Zhang Fenjai also placed his hands behind his back, raised his head and said with an indifferent expression. First of all, the 5 elements spiritual pearl has been completely destroyed. Secondly, you are no longer qualified to continue fighting with me. Haha. The first air-to-air fight. If it weren't for the sudden interruption by the young traffic policeman, I'm afraid the other party would not only be embarrassed and vomiting blood and injured. The second time of fighting in the air. Although it was just a draw with each of them taking a step back, they still had the upper hand in the whole process of the fight. If he didn't want to lose a trace of his thoughts integrated into the poison, how could the other party have the qualifications to let him take the initiative to stop? Now, only more than 2 months have passed since the 2nd battle, and my cultivation has successfully advanced to the foundation building realm, and my strength has increased by at least 10 times. So, why does the other party have the qualifications and confidence to despise you? Therefore, when faced with the second reason given by Zhang Fenjai, Wu Yuja couldn't help but laugh to the sky. Wu Yuja, who had been laughing for more than a minute, suddenly stopped laughing, shouted loudly, and at the same time, a strong aura emerged from his body, and then he rushed towards Zhang Fenjai like an overwhelming force. Ignorant child, don't be arrogant. Facing the overwhelming momentum, Zhang Fenjai also put his hands behind his back without dodging or counter-attacking, like a rock standing on the seashore, letting the wind surge, while I looked at Wu Yuja unmoved. Although Zhang Fenjai was not affected by the powerful aura at all, the pretty girl standing behind him could not withstand the impact of the powerful aura. Her face suddenly changed and she took a few steps back, with an extremely shocked look in her eyes. Not only was he shocked that the boss had such strong strength, but he was also surprised by Zhang Fenjai's ability to resist like a breeze blowing on his face. He tried his best to stimulate the momentum of the initial stage of the first level of foundation building, but was unable to shake Zhang Fenjai in the slightest, which made Wu Yuji's face gradually become serious. The first time he fought in the air, Zhang Fenjai was just a young monk at the peak of the 6th level of qi condensation. During the second air-to-air fight, Zhang Fenjai had just broken through to the 7th level of qi condensation. Now, in just over 2 months, could it be that the other party's cultivation level has advanced to the foundation building realm? Thinking of this, Wu Yuji, who suddenly withdrew his strong momentum, appeared in front of Zhang Fenjai like a gust of wind, and pressed his skinny and pale right hand directly towards his chest. In response, Zhang Fenjai did not fight back or dodge like he did to the pretty girl, and let the opponent's palm hit his chest. Bang! However, he was not completely passive. He instantly mobilized the double defense formed by the gray energy in his danchan and the strength of his body to directly rebound Wu Yuji's palm power. Puff! Bombarded by the rebound force of the defense, Wu Yuji, who retreated 9 steps in a row, spit out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale instantly, which made the pretty girl's face suddenly change and she immediately rushed to his side, then reached out to hold his arm. Zhang Fenjai, what is your cultivation level now? Ignoring the pretty girl who supported him, Wu Yuji asked with disbelief in his eyes. After all, relying only on spiritual power and physical defense, he can not only resist his full strength attack, but also severely injure himself with the rebound force of defense. This is enough to prove that Zhang Fenjai's cultivation level is definitely not at the initial stage of foundation building. It's easy to kill you, Zhang Fenjai replied calmly. Wu is not as skilled as you are, you go ahead. With only the double defense of spiritual power and physical body, he could injure his internal organs and meridians. If the opponent used all his strength, it would be easy to kill him. Therefore, Wu Yuji directly put on a gesture of giving up resistance completely and closed his eyes.